how do you balance that going from the sure to the unsure and let that be part of your negotiation strategy? You know what I mean? That should fit into your negotiation process um, somewhere that you're stepping into something that, but you're afraid of it, you know, and worry about I'm leaving this sure thing for that other thing. Oh, how do you factor that into negotiations? You know, where so you know that okay, if I get this salary and I do this work for this amount of time, it would have been worth, stepping forward that way. So,
Yep, I think I got you. It's always a
okay,
risk. That's the risk we have to be willing to take at the end of the day.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And some people, because they're getting the opportunity, think that, oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I don't need to negotiate anything further.
Ooh, that's the biggest trap. Yeah, yeah. Especially my
Right,
ladies.
right. Oh, I really wanted this job. I got this, so I don't need to negotiate anything. So, yeah,
Yep.
well, welcome. Let's see who's here. We have a couple people strolling into the room. So I think we had about 150 people registered. So of course, not everybody shows up, but I think you were talking to Kiba about how it is that we communicate with them afterwards. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to take a whole lot of time here. I'm just going to welcome everybody. Drop in the chat. Let me know where you are and what the temperature is where you are, because where I am, it's like 92 degrees. What is it where you are, Cory?
Shoot, it's probably about the same. That's a good question. I just keep the AC on and try to keep it pushing.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
94.
yeah.
Yep. 94
Oh,
degrees out here.
hotter. Jeez. I didn't even realize that we had actually started hurricane season already because all of a sudden we were in July. So,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of people are sweltering. So, hopefully, you are somewhere comfortable. Oh, Kashana is in Hartford and I'm going to say it's only
77.
77.
Mm.
Only 77. Yeah, that'll be a dream right about now. That's kind of like my slightly higher than my ideal temperature. But yeah, where I am, it's like 92 degrees and it's 7 o'clock in the evening and it's still 92 degrees. So uh
Things
I'm
up.
gonna let you take it away, Cory. Jacksonville, okay, 88.
Oh,
So
I think it'd be
yeah,
hotter in Jacksonville.
well, thank God it's not.
Hmm.
Baltimore 81. I think, was it Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York had really bad thunderstorms last night too. So, flooding's on everybody's mind. But I'm going to let you take it away, Cory, because this topic remains important. It
Mm.
never, there is never a time where negotiation is not an important thing that is sitting in someone's wheelhouse. Someone is in Hawaii. Kimona is in Hawaii where it's 88 degrees. El
Lex.
Dorado, Arkansas, 95. Oh, yeah. Okay, you got me beat. Charlotte, North Carolina, 82. Well, I hope you're somewhere cool. I'm going to pass it on to Cory, and Cory will go ahead and introduce himself and just jump right into what he has for us today. A lot of learning to look forward to. So thanks again, Cory, for doing this for us. So I'm going to just shut up, mute myself, shut my photo off, and you're on.
Hey, it's amazing to be here. I appreciate you. Thanks for welcoming me back. I know I've been here a couple times, so it's great to come back and speak on a topic I'm passionate about. So, everybody, just take notes. There will be something valuable in this, I promise. Everybody has different styles and different strategies, but I want to make sure I introduce you to mine. Just give you something to think about, and you will be more prepared for that opportunity when it comes up to negotiate. So I am Cory Steward, certified career coach. I've been doing this for several years. Please visit careercoachcory.com. If you got any questions, you can always hit me up. We've got Instagram, Career Coach Cory. Follow me, add me, TikTok. You know how it goes. I try to do some tips. I'm not always consistent, but you can always just shoot me a message if you got a question, or we can always work together. If you like what you see tonight, we can always work one on one in all areas, whether it be LinkedIn, resumes, preparation, interviews, and of course, salary negotiation. All right. So we'll just go over a list of things tonight. What is salary negotiation? Why you should negotiate? Because some people don't know. Some people are still scared. Um, Making sure you know what your number is, because you got to know your numbers, just like we should know our budget of our finances. Very important to have all that preparation ahead of time. And then there's different strategies that you can do. And then just a couple scripts. We can always customize the script based off the situation that you're in, but these are some good general ones that you can follow and utilize. Okay, so let's make sure we start at the beginning here. What gets you an offer? That's having a good LinkedIn profile. If you were not aware, the number one way to get a job is through knowing somebody. That's number one. The number two way to get a job right now in 2025 is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is fire. I'm mad at LinkedIn because LinkedIn, they make you pay, you have to pay that little subscription to really get the juice. And so I don't want to have to pay, $39, $45 a month, but it's almost a necessity. If you can get away with it, leverage your network, but it's a really useful tool to really help you job seek a little bit better. And they probably play with the algorithms to the people that pay for the membership that they have. But LinkedIn's solid. Make sure you have a good profile that's in alignment with your resume. And if you interview well, you will get an offer. So if you do all those things correctly, you're going to end up in this position where they're giving you an offer and then you get to negotiate. All right. So what is not negotiation? Hey, you know what? If you don't give me this money, I'm gonna leave and just go elsewhere. You don't need to have that type of attitude. You don't explain to them, hey, you know what? I got these high. I just bought a car. I just bought a house. My rent just went up. They do not care. Those are not reasons to negotiate. That's an internal reason. We keep that to ourselves, but that's nothing we come to the table with. We want to make sure we have a appreciation attitude. We don't want to be aggressive. We got to be calm and cool, but you now have the power once they make you negotiation. But you cannot be forceful. What you want in negotiation is to reach a compromise. And a compromise is parties that's important in all relationships. That's when we both meet in the middle, when we both get what we want without the other person having to sacrifice. Because then if someone overextends and feels like they gave too much, that leads to resentment and an uncomfortable conversation moving forward. So you don't ever want to set yourself up to where you promise them the world and it's like, oh, okay, you said you're going to hit the ground running. So now they have these expectations that probably aren't as realistic, because now they feel like, now I'm paying you, so now I need you to jump through all these hoops. And then you're spending your Saturdays while you're on the beach checking your emails just to stay ahead of the game because you're in fear of losing that high wage that you were able to get. So negotiation is a strategic discussion used to reach an agreement, again, compromise, to settle differences between two parties, right? So you have to ask, when someone gives you a job offer, make sure you come ready to not accept that first offer. And that's kind of my rule of thumb in everything in life. Never accept the first offer that's being provided to you. I was just having a conversation with somebody, even rent. When they try to, hey, renew with us, we're going up on rent for $200. You can negotiate that. The oil change, you can negotiate that. Tires, you can negotiate that. Just in case you didn't know, there's so much markup in all things. So my first passion is sales, so I kind of understand the game. So I always want to give that advice out there. Negotiate everything. Ask. There's nothing wrong with asking politely with a smile. It's always a delay when you hit next. Excuse me. So you should negotiate. A lot of people are scared, like, oh, I never done that. Why should I? We don't want to have regrets. You're so excited and high of emotion that you don't want to come off some type of way, but you always need to ask so you can be at peace with yourself. Because when you 6 months into the job, or you find out there's some things going on, you don't want to say woulda, coulda, shoulda. I wish I would have negotiated more. A lot of times the companies, they're going to offer you the low ball role, right? There's always a little bit of wiggle room. It depends on the character of the recruiter or the hiring manager. that is making you the offer if they're going to give you the max or the min, right? So you always want to be assured that you're getting the maximum value offer that you can get. If you know you'll be an asset, you need to make sure you negotiate that. Ask. You always have to be an advocate for yourself. Several studies have shown that women make less than men because women don't want to come off unappreciative, and so therefore they get lowballed. And so there's a pay gap that begins to take place with women, and then we can even get into ethnic groups and all of that. It kind of really gets deep. Men typically have no problem asking for money. And it even comes down to even applying for a job. Ladies are very detailed, and they'll look at all the job duties and responsibilities and say, you know what? I'm not qualified for that. A guy will meet two or three out of the 10 job duties and responsibilities and still will apply. So just kind of want to make sure we shift our mindset to know that there's nothing wrong with negotiating. Well, what if they did take the job away? They're not going to take the job away. Actually, what's more likely to happen is they're going to respect you. Because if you have the ability to stand up for yourself, you'll be able to have the ability to stand up for the company and do what needs to be done to save them money on the front end when it comes to certain negotiations internally. And lastly, on this page, I'll wrap up with nothing negative could come from this, right? From asking, right? Only a positive, because you were already going to get this pay anyway. They're already going to give you 70,000. So the worst they could do is say no, but you really ask and you try to position yourself to get something more out of it. All right, so let's talk about inflation. Inflation really hasn't been that big of a deal until the past 5 years. So the traditional average merit increase is what companies do to help combat against inflation, right? Nice. Hey, this is a cost of living increase is what they call it. And the average company right now in the United States is giving a 3.2% merit increase. Some companies do 2%. Some companies don't do one at all. And some companies do 4 or 5%. But if we think about 3%, ask yourself when they ask you to renew your rent, since I mentioned that earlier, calculate the percentage increase it was over the previous year. You think it was 3%, or you think it was probably 15 to 20% or 25%. Think about the cost of groceries, the percentage of that candy bar, that milk. We won't even talk about eggs. There is a cost increase. And so right now, inflation is simply the purchasing power of goods on the rise over time. And so to really draw that home, if you pay attention to the bottom of my slide here, in January 2021, that wasn't even that long ago, January 2021, $100 had the buying power of $122 as it does today. So you know what that means? There's a 20% increase. So if you get a merit increase of 3.2%, that still puts you way behind based off the costs. Cars, car payments, interest rates for homes, everything is just up. So that 3% is not going to carry you in a sustainable way every year on your job. You're going to be behind the average pace of inflation. So that's just an additional reason on why you really got to come to the table and negotiate and ask for more money. Get out the comfort zone, go for it. You can easily get at least 10 to 12% more, and that's something better than nothing. We want to shoot for 2025, but at least 10 to 12% gives you a solid cushion for the next couple of years to stay ahead of the inflation game. All right, so there's all kinds of different negotiation styles. You can be combative, collaborative, avoidant, accommodative. Figure out your style that really works for you. But it's important to understand that both sides must reach a win-win, right? They're feeling like they're getting a great person who's going to hit the ground running and do excellent things and add tons of value to the company, because you've already shown that throughout the interview process, your skill sets and your abilities to show up, show out, make a difference. So you just have to determine what your style is going to be. Do you really want to be passive and cool about it? Hey, just whatever you guys think, I'm open. Maybe you just want to send a nice little email so there's no pressure. Maybe you want to be a little bit more direct, handle it in real time. Hey, let's have a phone conversation, right? So you can hear their tone and their pitch, and then you can kind of mimic it and go from there. But again, You really want to, it should be a mutual benefit where we both walk away as winners. Because again, we've all been in a situation where we feel like we got played, right? Where we gave more than what we received, what we got in return. So we don't want that. Buyer's remorse. So can't stress this enough. There's tons of statistics out here that really show that a lot of ladies, you know, traditionally haven't negotiated. And so that's changing. You know, we still have the gender pay gap, again, the ethnicity pay discrepancies, because the number one reason is we don't want to seem ungrateful, and there's a lot of emotion. When you've been applying for jobs and you finally get the job that you want and you get the offer, we on a high. I've seen it. I've even got into it with a friend. I was like, hey, you should have called me. Why didn't you do this? And it took that next job opportunity for them to really come back and really appreciate where I was coming from. I didn't want to steal their shine, but that's just how corporate America works. They will always give you a set price and make you feel like, oh, here's a great offer. How soon can we get you to sign? I'm going to sign this little DocuSign email. Did you get it? Just sign it and send it over. Nope. Don't rush the process. Take your time. What's the rush? So just want to make sure everybody knows, go for the win. And there's nothing wrong with asking, especially my ladies. And the earlier you start your negotiation, it's going to follow you all throughout your career. If you can negotiate in your 20s and your 30s, that puts you ahead of the pack already. So the quicker we can get over that fear of not being, coming off ungrateful, the more money over time they're going to make in our corporate career. So I would say, don't be scared. Be your own advocate. So can anybody tell me what movie this is from? Like to mix it up. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, it is okay to negotiate. Yes, Nicole. Nicole got it. All right. So there's a couple Miss Ambers. Yes. Yay. It's all right to negotiate, right? And again, they really expect you to. It's a respect thing, because when you work in HR, you see people lowball themselves, play themselves, because there's this gap of what they can offer, and sometimes they see that there's some wiggle room there that people don't even explore to see what exists. And again, they will respect you more. So always make sure you do that. They will not take away the job. Just want to stress that. People are so scared that, oh, I'll lose the job if I do that. Success is where preparation meets opportunity. I'm a big fan of that. For this negotiation thing to go well, you got to be on your P's and Q's and plan well in advance. And the good news is, once you assess where you're at in life financially and your budget and what you need and what you've been making, and be mindful of what the industry is paying for your role, you will be super fine. And with all that knowledge, you know how to negotiate, because you know you're not getting played, right? Just like going shopping for a car. What's the average price of this vehicle? What's the average price for my trade-in? If you're aware of all those things, you will not be taken advantage of. But you can't just show up to the lot or show up to the job or try to negotiate without any type of preparation. So do your homework. So question is, well, where can I find the pricing? Where can I find the salary? Salary.com is a useful tool. Glassdoor is a useful tool. So is PayScale, ZipRecruiter. There's all kinds of resources out there that you can utilize. They will not give you the exact price, but they'll give you a range. So don't just say, if you know good and well, the average rate is 90,000, and on one of these websites it has 125,000 posted. Be mindful of, okay, is that California? Where's that price coming from? Just take the average, just so you're in the ballpark, right? You don't have to have an exact price, but you want to be within that range of what's an acceptable salary for that position you're preparing for, so you don't get too lowballed. And then if they were giving you something on the high end, you can shut up and take the win. So just do your homework. Look for salaries listed in several job postings. That happens pretty often, especially with LinkedIn. If you have that premium, they'll try to give you the average pay for this role, or just traditional salary that this should be paid out. They'll give you something. Don't take it for 100%, but you just want to be in the ballpark, and it'll give you a gauge of where you should be. And here's a solid tip. Remember this. Ask them on the front end from that first phone call. You don't say, how much are y'all paying? once the conversation goes well, say, wow, thank you so much. What's the pay range for someone with my skill set, my experience offered for this role? And you better write that down and remember it, because they know they want to try to fill you out before they move you on. And that's why they make you fill out an expected salary range during the application process. But if you can, from that first phone call that you get from the recruiter, which you should always let the voicemail, let it go to voicemail so you can be prepared, get your notes. And that's one of the reasons why. And when she shares with you, or he shares with you, what the pay range is, you can write that down, because when you're 2 to 3 steps down the process of the interview process and make it to the negotiation offer phase, now you have a solid number to go off of, that you can say, well, I know they said anywhere from 80 to 110, so I'm going to ask them for 110,000 and see if we can get there. Man, there's always like a little delay. See, now it skip like 80. Okay. Boom. Here we go. So the interview process. All right, let's see here. Brittany, we got a question. Can these methods also be applied for current employees looking to negotiate a higher annual raise? For example, asking for more than an annual increase. Yes, it's just a little bit challenging, because they already got you on the hook. The best time to negotiate, and when it's highest in your favor, is when you first get the offer, but you can absolutely do it during a merit increase. Just do the data. In the state of Detroit, here's the current inflation. I'm grateful for this 3%, but is there any way we can get closer to 6%? Typically, companies, when they do their budget, they have fixed cost in. It's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, because I noticed companies that are really strict and have low merits they are financially stronger, because overall everybody's capped. And so the biggest expense for a company is salary. So if you can cap these merits and just keep them, low as possible, it allows the company to be financially stronger, so they're less likely to do layoffs. It's kind of the trade-off. So just make sure you're aware of the health of the company financially, and you're paying attention, if they're a publicly owned company, to when they have those stock calls and they're releasing what their annual and quarterly earnings are, to let you know where things are at. But yes, you can ask. Nothing wrong with that. Do your homework just like you would do this. They can be applied. It's just a little bit more challenging. And plus, the best you could hope for is 3 or 4%. When you're negotiating on the front end, you can get 15 to 25% on top of your original offer. Yep, I'll definitely get to the sign-on bonus at the end too. So good question. Negotiation starts at first contact. So let me reiterate, don't mention money at all throughout the interview process. You have no power until an offer is made. If you interview well, negotiating and handling salary becomes a very easy thing to take care of, because they're very impressed with you and they see your value. And if that's the only thing we need to do is come to a compromise on this money thing, they're gonna do it, because you performed well and you were the first person that went to make this offer with anyway. Also a tip, get a benefits guide. Can anybody give me a guess on why you need to get the benefits guide on the front end? Let's see what y'all come up in the chat. Why on that first initial, when you get that phone screen and things are going well, and they say they're going to move you forward, or they like you, you're going to politely ask, hello, could you send me a benefits guide as well, just for my reference, for me to review? Can anybody give me an idea why you would want to ask for a benefits guide on the front end? All right, that could be negotiated also. What else? To line it up, how much you make, Mr. Hillard, so you can see what they are offering. All right. There we go. All these are good things. But here's why. Because we got to hustle. We got to be 5 steps ahead. So, you know what? We traditionally do 2 weeks of vacation, but we're gonna offer you 3. But you've already got the benefits guide. You're like, nah, it's standard that y'all give 3. So y'all really aren't leveraging anything. You're just giving me something that I was already going to get anyway. But people will do that to try to, play you, make things seem like you're getting more than what you actually are. So because you understand the benefits guide, right? For one, you can calculate your insurance costs, right? That family or which plan you need to be on. That's always nice. But okay, floating holidays, what are the standard PTO days, the vacation time, all that you can know up front. So when it's time to negotiate, you know what you're asking for, because you want to negotiate everything you want at this particular point in time. You don't want to come back after you start the job and then be like, yeah, you know what? I see that we don't get off for Juneteenth. I should ask for an extra floating holiday. It's a little too late at that point, and it's going to be extremely hard to come back after you've already started the job. So get the benefits guide so you can understand what all the company offers. And what I love about a company, I like to go to the gym. And these gym expenses, I'd love to go to the high-end gym, $40, $50 a month, lifetime fitnesses with the spa and pools. Maybe they give you money back for that. Maybe they give you a credit up to $50. So I know what I can negotiate versus what's already being given to me. So I think we got that, but some great ideas, great ideas. See, it had me click. Okay. So I think I hit on these resources. There we go. So again, I mentioned these resources for you to find out how you can get an idea of what the salary is. Here's an example for ZipRecruiter. You put it in. You want to make sure you put in the states. Here's the average cost. So this is a nice little range. So if I was going for an accounting information system role, I'd probably ask for about 116,000. And then when they ask you to justify that, if you want to email it, I take screenshots of this, find another source that shows they're paying 120,000 and say, here's where I got that from. So then you have something to stand on, some type of backing that says, hey, I did my homework. This is what I really feel my value is. I'm not just making these numbers up. So now it makes you look more credible instead of just asking for more money. Salary listed. So we talked about LinkedIn earlier. And then again, refer to your notes from that pre-screen, from an initial conversation that you had when you're being onboarded. No, most companies don't. There's about a handful of states in the United States that they do have salary transparency laws, but they do post the pay, but not every state has that, right? Which I'll touch more on that later. Oh yeah, Texas, nah. Texas don't have to tell you nothing when they post a job. California does though. I think Colorado also. So boom, slides right in, Mary. You were ahead of the game. So this could change. There's been a lot of political movement, with laws being passed. So you just want to stay up to date to see if your state does have a pay transparent. It is a pay transparency state. But all you have to do is, if it's the same position posted in Colorado or Louisiana, that's not too far from Texas, that gives me a range. And then I can look at what the cost of living is in Texas versus Louisiana or Colorado, and I can come up with the difference, right? That still gives you a solid ballpark range for what's being paid. We definitely know living in California is going to be a lot different from Texas. I'm right here in Texas myself. But you can just crunch the numbers and you can get a solid number of an average on what that pay should be. So you're equipped with some knowledge and some information. Right. Man, it's just going slow. So, and if you get to the details, depending on what state you're in, they can disclose the min and max pay when they're advertising for a job. Some of them say they can't even ask you what your business, how much were you paid at your last job? They can ask you that. There's typically 3 things that they do. They can, when they do run an employment background, hey, how long was this person in this role? What was their title? And are they rehireable? Right? So those are kind of the main things. It becomes a legal issue if they start asking questions about your pay. So the good news is, if you made 80,000 and you're saying, hey, you know what, right now I really feel like I'm valued at 100,000. I've been at the job for 4 or 5 years. At this next role, I'm expecting 100,000. That's okay. It's really not their business, but just make sure you're familiar with the state that you're in and some of the laws that are at play And you can always reach out to a labor lawyer as well, if you really want to get to the details. But I think this is a beautiful thing, because sometimes you just be like, what they paying? Can I know it on the front end? But companies don't want to do that. And then they'll drag you all through the process. And if you don't know how to strategically ask the right questions throughout the interview process, you could really waste your time. That happens. All right. So the power of negotiation. So just imagine a world where you negotiated more money for yourself. So and then you're getting merit increases on top of it. You switch jobs, you're getting more money. Right now we can switch jobs. You back in my day, you were a job hopper if you left the job after a year or 2 years, heck, even 3 years. You almost had to just marry yourself to a job because you didn't want to look bad on paper or the resume. You were miserable and it was getting on your nerves. But hey, you want to make your resume look good. So now we live in a world where, you could be somewhere and plant your feet for 2 years and then roll out, or a year and a half and then leave. Long as you have a justifiable reasoning why you left, right? Recruiters are now millennials. We're a lot more open-minded and fair. Long as it makes sense, we're not going to be petty. And then because you've made more money, you can have a higher contribution to your 401k match. So we really have to think about the power of negotiation on how it can impact you, not just your salary, but in all things financially overall in your life. So I like to just get some numbers here. So if we look at this, so 60,000. If you just negotiate an extra 7% from 60,000, just a 7%, that's $4,200. And so you take that $4,200 times 3, and look where you at. That's an extra $12,000 in your pocket, all because you negotiate. And that's very conservative. 7%, that's just like, you know what? I'll take it. So definitely want to make sure you do it. So let's step it up a notch. Say you do make 75K and you're looking to get another 10%. That's 82,000. So because you open your mouth, you're now getting an extra $7,500 a year. You know what? You could pay off a car probably 2.5 years sooner with that type of extra money, right? So just don't sell yourself short. Don't be too scared to take advantage of the opportunity. Just ask for what you want, and at least have that conversation so you can be at peace and have no regret. Maybe there's a chance they'll say no, but more than likely they're going to say yes if you just go about it and follow the right negotiation strategy, and you will be fine. But make sure you ask. It's definitely what you need to do and should do. So there's 3 numbers that I always recommend you figure out when it comes to negotiation. You do your budget, and we all know what you need with your budget. We want to have a little bit of fun, but we don't need to be buying, doing the most, right? But here's a minimum acceptable number that I know if I don't get this, I'm walking away. And I didn't talk about that yet, but the biggest thing with negotiation is you got to be prepared to walk away. They might call your bluff. If you really feel you're valued at this number, and this is what the market values you at, because it's a combination. It's your worth versus what the market values you at, right? So always keep that in mind. So you have your minimum acceptable number that pays all your bills. You still have some fun, and then you have your happy number, your target number that you want. I always say that's 12 to 20% higher. I think if you can get that, that's good. That's enough to switch a job, in my opinion, depending on the pain point. Because if you ask the right person, if you got a manager that's getting on your nerves and you're on a sinking ship, you'll be happy just to make the same pay, right? Because there's other things that are value here besides just money, which I'll touch on. Then what I call the turn up number. You know what? They gave me $125,000 and I was making 89 at my last job. You winning. That's a number. 25% pay increase or higher. That's something to really be proud of. But you really need to have all these numbers written down ahead of time so you can negotiate and be able to pivot and push back when you get a number you don't like, and it can be justifiable. And if you do this today, I want everybody to do this today, because if you do it now ahead of time, it takes the emotion out. But when you have an offer in hand on the table and you got these numbers and you're trying to debate, should I accept this role? I've already been looking for a job for the past 6 months. They just announced layoffs. What should I do? Managing your emotions and setting the right expectation for yourself, this takes all the guesswork out. So then it just becomes a plug and play system, because you've already got your 3 numbers, your minimum acceptable number, your target number, and your turn up number. All right. So I talked about the rules of engagement here. There's a switch. When you went through 4 or 5 steps of the interview process, and I'll get to these questions here in a moment. Uh, when you now have a job offer on the table, after you went through 3 or 4 steps of the interview process, you've got the power. There's a shift. Understand you have no power to ask for a gosh darn thing until they make an offer. That means they're sold on you, they've got the budget approved, and they're trying to make you an offer. Make sure you be prepared to walk away. If they give you something petty that you really don't like and you know you can find something better, thank you so much for the opportunity. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to decline because I was looking for this particular price point. Uh, Remind them of your skills. Make sure you are grateful. That's the most important thing. Always come from a place of appreciation and gratefulness, and smile, have a warm, positive attitude. Um, Whoever says the first number loses. If you must say a first number, say something on the super, super high end, because a good recruiter is prepared for this. And they're going to try to negotiate right back with you. Say, well, what number is it looking for? Well, I was really looking to see on what you thought was a fair offer, and I feel like 80 is really not fair. I was looking to be closer to about 100 and between 100 and about 110,000, right? So you've already put an extra 20,000 on top of it. If you notice in my wording, they offered you 80, and I really felt like, somewhere between 100 and 110. So then you listen and feel like, and then they'll tell you if that's within a range, if that's something that's doable, if you're absolutely out of the ballpark. Then you can kind of back it up because you'd rather say a little bit too high than say too low. So here's a style that you can do. Figure out the number that you want. Let's be realistic and not greedy. Please, y'all. If you're interviewing for an accounting role and you don't have your CPA, let's be realistic with what our salary expectation is. Not every job is a six-figure job. Not every job is a $150,000 job. Sometimes a good job is probably $82,000 or $72,000. That's why once you do your homework of what the salary and the average pay scale is, this will become very evident to you throughout the process, so you can know for yourself what is a fair market range and what everybody else is typically paying for this role versus what your job offer is that you actually get. All right, so figure out what your number is, be prepared to walk away. I talked about that. What's the salary range that you have to offer? You can ask that early on in the process if they haven't shared that already. They're trying to beat you up on the phone. Hey, what are you looking for? Hey, I'm sure you'll make a fair and equitable offer. Try to shook and jive on offering a number, especially up front. Please avoid at least 2 to 3 attempts on giving a number. Have a response every single time they ask you, well, what is it that you're really looking for? Well, I was really looking to see what particular pay that you guys do offer. Could you share that with me? What's your range so I can value your time? Oh, okay. Well, what salary range do you have? Just kind of play that game, because you could say 90, but they know they're willing to pay you 120,000. So that's why you want to avoid that. And the more you do your homework, this is where all this comes in, because you're going to be confident in your answers, your responses. So has anybody heard of the term drop the anchor? Drop the anchor. All right, we got a no. Okay. Okay, so dropping the anchor is when you say some crazy number that you know is probably not realistic, but you're not dropping a low realistic number to where we can get a number that we're probably not going to like. So whoever drops the anchor first kind of drops in. Whoever says a number first, like a general rule, whoever says the number first loses. So if you're forced to say a number, drop the anchor. If you know the role is paying 100,000 typically on average, you say, you know what, I would love 125,000 for this role. So like I said, you put yourself a little bit on the high end, but not anything that's too disrespectful, but you drop the anchor. So she's going to work you down, or he's going to work you down, that recruiter, and now say, you know what, we definitely don't have that in the budget, but we could definitely get closer to 112,000, maybe 115 I could push out. So now we're having conversations, and now that you dropped the number, they're going to drop a number, and now that's when the negotiation starts, and you find a compromise in the middle. All right. So after the offer, what we do, always be grateful, show appreciation and enthusiasm. That's the most important part. Uh, wow, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I'm excited at the thought of working for you all. Can I please have 24 to 48 hours just to reflect and think about this opportunity? You can buy yourself time like that. I have clients, Cory, I got 2 job offers. Hey, well, we're going to string this thing along. We're going to ask for 3 days to think about it. So the other company, we can say, hey, I got another job offer. Here's the email. If you could do better, I'll decline it and I'll start with you. But y'all been taking all day. This is my 4th or 5th interview throughout the process. Push them to pull the trigger to choose you. And it could really become a valuable thing when you get 2 offers. But again, be grateful. See, now it's going to go ahead 50 times because I didn't click this button. Yep, there we go. All right. So you always want to, thank you, Mary, request an email with the details of the offer. Get something in paper and say, you know what, I will review this and I'll respond within 48 hours. So this is when you go back, get your stuff together. All right, Coach Cory, I need your help. Or you go back to the notes or you review this presentation, which you will share at the end. And then you make sure you got your 3 numbers together. You pick up the phone and then you hold strong. Wow, I really had a chance to review this offer. Thank you so much. I was really looking to be closer to XYZ. Wow, I see that I'm working from home, 2 days out of the week. Is there any way I could work from home 3 days out of the week? And you just get what your game plan is together. And you don't have to wait the full 40 hours, by the way, because we all know if we're going to accept the job or not. So if you talk to them at 10 a.m. and they send over the information, feel free to call them after lunch and, hey, just want to get back to you. I had a chance to review the offer. Is there any way we can do this? Because you want to give them an opportunity to knock it out, because it is very painful and expensive to hire somebody. They just spent a month, 2 months pulling in people from important interviews, having the HR director get approval for this, getting your department manager head to approve it, as well as another supervisor. All these people have to come together, so they don't want to lose you if it's $10,000 on the table. So you can definitely make that happen. So here's something I want you to consider. This is up to you. Do you want to negotiate everything that you want all at once in one email? Hey, I would like to get this in pay. I want an additional paid time off. Or a lot of coaches will recommend you do it separately. Handle your salary, one thing, get that done. Okay, cool. Let's talk about equity. Let's talk about stocks. Let's talk about benefits. In my opinion, again, there's different strategies. Ask for what you want all up front. We are going to have a conversation about salary, but in that same breath, I'm going to transition and talk about the other things that I want. Because typically my thing that I value is salary and vacation time. So when I'm having my negotiations, I'm discussing both and asking for what I want up front. Because I don't want them to hang up the phone with me. They got me more money. Then, okay, thank you so much. Now can we talk about, stock investments? Try to go back and forth, negotiate on that. All right, well, let me hang up the phone with them and let me call my supervisor again. At some point, it can almost seem like we're doing a lot of back and forth, and you could just be pushing the limit. And you don't want to push too much where they say, you know what, they ask for too much. Let's explore other options, right? So we've all tried to quote unquote what they call be greedy, right? And then we walked away with nothing. So I do believe there's nothing wrong with separating it. It has worked for people, but that's just my personal feeling. But you try it and see what works best for you. But I always narrow my stuff down to about 2 asks and then maybe like a third wish. But I want extra money and I want extra vacation days. But my wish would be, more expenses on a company vehicle. That I'm not gonna break that, or maybe get my tolls expensed or paid for, or get my parking paid for when I have to drive downtown. I'll mention that to see if that's an option, but if not, it's not the end of the world. All right. So part of keeping a positive attitude in when we're negotiation, you want to be positive with your language. Because we've all said stuff that set people off. It's like, you know what? Get out my face. I don't even want to work with you anymore. Right? You know what? End of discussion. I was open, but because you're coming at me crazy, I don't even want to have this conversation. Right? So that's why we want to keep a positive attitude and we use positive language. I'm so grateful for this offer and excited to work with you, blah, 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 blah. How can we close this gap? Just think about how that sounds. You know what? Hey, I know you want to see them on XYZ weekends. How can we close this gap, right? I know you want me to go here, but how about let's meet midway point? Life is about compromising and negotiation, period, right? Nobody should always be so selfish or so self-centered to always get their way. The same way it works for corporate America, it works outside, right? So utilize that, but we got to be positive with using the right language. You offer an alternative. Say, hey, I'm open. I'm not rigid here. Don't nobody want to work with anybody who's just rigid and so fixed. What can we do here? And you want to hope they say, you know what, let me get back to you in 24 hours and see what I can do. Like I said, you show your gratitude, how grateful you are, and you always make it clear to them you want to make this work. So because they might have to go through financial approval, they might have to go through 2 department heads just to get an extra $10,000. Because typically that's not a one-person decision, right? But if the manager, the hiring manager wants it to happen, they can make it happen, but they just have to get approval from typically HR and finance to make that happen. So always be positive and let them know that you're worth it by showing your gratitude and appreciation and your open-mindedness to work together. All right. So I want to tell y'all the story. So I was working with a client, I coached him, he got the job and he got the job offer. And he said, Cory, I'm not too concerned about the money, but, he went through a divorce and part of that court order system, what he had to do is he had to pick his child up from daycare at 3:00, 3 days out of the week. So what time do most companies have you start and come to work, right? And end? 8 a.m. to 5, right? 9 to 6, traditional work hours, right? But what time does that daycare want you to pick them up typically? What time does school get out, right? 2:45, 2:30, 3:00. So instead of him negotiating money, you know what he asked for? He said, hey, is it okay if I come in early, 2 hours early, 2 to 3 days out of the week, so I could then leave early to pick up my child from school, because that's part of what the agreement was. And you know what the manager said in response? Not a problem. So negotiation, I need you to know it's more than just this dollar amount here. Childcare, titles, gym memberships, profit sharing, bonuses, the 401k contribution, flexible work from home schedules. I have friends that work in downtown Dallas. They have to pay for parking. And parking that garage every day, $12, $10, $8, that really adds up. Sometimes the company will compensate and cover half of the cost, but these are things that could be negotiated. But that's why I told you to ask for the benefits guide up front, so you know what the company's willing to offer and already willing to offer. You should always have to ask, even if it's one thing, I'm cool with that. But you should be trying to get something more than what they offered you so you can feel really good about the situation. So just know, compensation is not tied to salary or pay per hour. You need to have a full total compensation perspective when it comes to getting more and squeezing something out extra out of the deal. All right. So, all right, cool. So how should we handle negotiations? Should we do this by phone? Hey, shout out to all my Android users. I have to make sure I have the fold up there. That's my phone. Do you handle this over the phone or do you handle this through email? So the preference is yours. If you're not as skilled, maybe you want to do email, kind of follow a couple of templates or some scripts to do it that way. I like to do it over the phone because if they're excited and they're willing to make something happen, they're going to have a higher sense of urgency, and we can get it all taken care of over the phone. Not a problem. It's whatever your preference is. Here's an example of a script, right? Hello, Veronica, and happy Friday. Because I always try to tee it up to where I interview on Thursdays or Fridays because people are typically in good moods. They're excited, especially if it's a beautiful day outside. So, anyways, hello, Veronica, happy Friday. Thanks so much for the offer, and I'm excited about the opportunity to work for you. So you're already showing language that you're excited, you want the job. You just want to, hey, is there wiggle room on the salary? I'd love to see this come up to 86, 400. So I like to, don't, sometimes people want to say 85. I want you to use odd numbers. Don't do even numbers. Odd numbers make it seem like you really crunched it. You really gave this some thought. It's easy to say, you know what? They offered me 82. I just want 85. Nope. Say 86, 400. I know it sounds weird. I'm weird. I'm crazy. But part of my strategy at Get Career Confidence is stand out, get hired, be confident, right? So you have to stand out in these unique ways because in life, you damned if you do, damned if you don't. So don't be like everybody else and just give some round even number. About 100,000 would be fine. 105,000. That's too generic. But the person that says, you know what, I would like 106,400, they're going to really stand back and be like, okay, they probably really gave this some thought. And this is coming from a place of seriousness, right? And not just rattling off a number. It's like coming with experience and existing relationships to hit the ground running. You're assuring them that you're ready to get started. Additionally, I currently have 4 weeks of PTO. Could you add 7 more days of PTO? If we can come to this agreement, I'd proudly sign this offer letter today. So this has urgency on your behalf to get the job done. All you need them to do is just give you a little bit more money. Just give me 7 more days. Just add that on. That's a backspace plus easy thing to do. And I appreciate your consideration and look forward to hearing from you soon. To me, this hits on all your excitement. You're happy. My short, sweet, to the point. I'm gracious, and I got my 2 asks in there that I told you I care about. Give me some more money and give me some more vacation time. Here's another example. Thank you for your interest and offer. I'm excited at the thought of taking ownership of this position and working with your customers. I see myself doing well in this role and driving, blah, blah, blah. I do have some things I want to share with you. Below and attached to some market research I did in addition to other companies in this competitive market. So I'm dropping a seed like, hey, everybody's looking for a marketing director right now, or whatever you want to call it. So it's kind of competitive. And so if you can do this amount or even close to that, so by me adding that language even close to that, that means that you're willing to be flexible. You're not stuck on some number, but you've already did your 3 numbers. So you know what your happy number is, the number that you need. It's worth the ask or even close to it. So that lets them know that you're willing to be flexible. So they're probably not going to give you the number that you want, but they're going to give you more than the number of the original offer. That's the point of this. I would be at ease. Like, I'd be grateful. I purposely use different types of language. I also have 3 weeks currently of vacation and would like at least an additional 3 days of vacation. And again, those are my 2 asks. If you can make this happen, I can happily accept and sign today. Thanks so much, and let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I look forward to hearing from you. And you provided the receipts. We big on receipts. Boom, here's a screenshot of what I found from doing my homework. See attached. And then let them figure it out. So now we've got, all right, thank you, Nicole. Great, glad you love it. An offer from another company, now you got a little situationship here. What do you do? Because if you're interviewing consistently, I don't care if things are going well, you don't stop interviewing until you get a job offer. Do not stop interviewing until you get a job offer because emotions fade. Oh, I feel good about it. I feel good about it. But you know what? The person who you've interviewed with could switch and go to a different company. I've had that happen to me. So now their whole interview process for that position has stopped and put on pause, and you thought it was going so well. So no matter how good you think things are going, nothing's for sure until you sign on a dotted line. Want to hear back from an ideal company. Should I accept or should I quit later? Should I decline? If you have two job offers, I'm going to tell you always do what's best for you, but you want to never burn bridges and build relationships. So that's why you need to do all your research on the front end so you can kind of see what's coming around the corner later on. And if people really value in the company, hopefully they have their stuff together. Because just because a company takes a long time to hire you doesn't mean they're not interested. People go out on vacation, and sometimes it just takes approval from multiple departments. And some companies just aren't as efficient as others. All right. So as we wrap up, we'll get to some of these questions. I need you to walk away from tonight knowing that you are valuable and it doesn't hurt to negotiate. You should always negotiate, but be respectful and be kind and see what happens. You need to do your homework. Don't just be making up numbers. In fact, if you just make up a number, you're probably not going to get what you want because it's going to be disrespectful. This job doesn't pay more than 100,000, but you're asking me for 140,000. Now that's just you're not even on par. So that's kind of ridiculous and it seems like it's a waste of time. So know your number, know your number, know your three numbers. Always show gratitude and appreciation and be ready to walk away. You know, don't let your mouth write a check your behind can't cash, right? Very important. If you want this and you feel this is your value, go in for it. Always be ready to walk away if things aren't going well how you imagine. But we should also be grateful that a lot of people are losing their jobs. So there's a lot to consider here, but you should always still negotiate. All right. So this is me again. Follow me, LinkedIn. I'm Cory Steward. Instagram, TikTok, Career Coach Cory. I have a couple of past videos on there you can check out for some tips. You can email me if you want to work with me. You tell me you viewed this. I will give you a discount. We can work together. I love to do interview coaching sessions, and we'll meet for a couple hours and take care of your resume and help you out with your LinkedIn. So now we just want to open up to a couple questions.
Awesome. Yeah, while you're looking at those, I just wanted to reiterate. You talked about it from the candidate perspective, as someone who has been on the HR side,
Mm-hmm.
everything you said is absolutely correct. Positivity, positivity, positivity. And most companies have the funds. They have the funds. They might need approvals. They might need to move something around, but when they're at that point where they know you're the candidate, a lot of companies will go find the funds if you're being reasonable. And
Mm-hmm.
you said it very, very well right up front, Cory. Negotiations will not have them take something off the table. They won't take the offer off the table unless you show some new kind of behavior that you did not demonstrate throughout
Uh-huh.
the interview process, where because it happens. I've seen offers pulled, and one of the reasons is the not putting the offer, uh, not making it tight enough. Like you said, you have your two things that you really care about, and then you'll
Mm-hmm.
find people where it's, oh, okay, first they negotiate this, then they want to negotiate this, then they want to come back with something else. And you're talking on the HR side, they have timelines in their head. They know what start dates they have. They know when somebody's like stringing them along. And there might
Mm-hmm.
be other candidates that they will move to. So unless you show some kind of behavior that they hadn't seen in the interview process, then you're the candidate that they want. So all good information. One of the questions that I think I didn't hear you cover was someone asked about how you handle it if the job application
Yes,
is
locked into
requiring that you
Keisha.
put, that you share a
Mm-hmm.
salary. How do you
Love
handle
that
that?
question. So the application is a game. It's a filtering thing. Understand when you see a job, it's probably 450 people that apply for that same job. Your job is just to get to the next step. You're not tied to that price, but part of research when you're interviewing, I have a lot of people that come to me, oh, I just can't find anything. It's because they're applying to any and everything. Know your niche. If you in IT, you should know what the average salary and pay scale for this particular IT role is. If you're in marketing, you should
Correct.
know what a marketing content creator, what the pay range is. So it should
Correct.
not be an issue for you to put in what that salary range is. And if you have to, if you know that it's typically going for 80, I'd put 77 in there, because when they set the parameters, they're probably saying, hey, I want to talk to candidates, for this role anywhere from 70 to 80, right? And if you might
Got
say
it.
80, and that might take you out, because they have these filters, like when we do our filters on Google Flights, nonstop, two stops, one stop, pay, airlines. When they set that system up, they have the opportunity to filter in on applicants and filter out the applicants that they're open to look at. So I would play their game right back at them. You are not married to that price. I think once upon a time you probably were, but you can pivot out of that. Hey, you know what? I put 79, that could have been a typo, but I'm well aware of the average pay structure for this role is XYZ. And you can easily move away from that because you're not bound to it. You didn't accept an offer to it. The number that you accept an offer to is the number that matters. So I hope that makes sense to you. But the biggest thing is know your craft, know your area of expertise. And if you're not bouncing around in all these different jobs and all these different types of roles, that's when your pay fluctuates. But if you kind of stand in your lane, there's 2 to 3 different job roles that you're looking for, you should know that pay range, and they're going to honor that pay range and what the average market price is. Just go with the lower side
Point.
of it instead of the upper side of it this time.
Good point when you say, if you know your role. One of the questions someone asked was, what if you are a returning employee? What if you were with the company, you left at one salary, went away, and then you're coming back? How do you negotiate at that point? I don't see a difference with all the other things that you've talked about, but what do you think?
You need to come in strong too. Hey, I left at this role. I need to come back. Just like they hired the other person, they could easily get that extra money as well. So yes, you get your extra 12 or 15% that you feel you need. And that's honestly fair. And an HR person would almost expect that. If you're coming back into the role, I shouldn't come in at the same price. And depending on how bad or how much you want the role, I mean, maybe it's not a super huge increase, but best believe if they hired somebody outside of you, um, they would have the same opportunity to get that extra money on top.
Absolutely, and I would imagine too, it also has something to do with how long you might have left the company. If you left the company and while you were gone, there everybody got merit raises for,
Mhm.
and you may have gotten an adjustment also where you are. That could be a factor also. And companies like when they don't have to teach you about the company, if they're even open to bringing you back, that's because you're going to solve a lot of problems for HR,
That's
meaning
right.
we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this recruitment. So, go ahead and ask. Um,
Excellent.
Someone asked a question about what if your company says the only amount you can get for a merit adjustment is 5%. That's it. We're not going any further.
I would
What do
say
you
that's
think of
good.
that?
5% is good.
That's
At
what I thought
just
too.
just just to be real, 5% is good. If you can get 5% merit, that's good. They're making, again, corporate America is already kind of like petty and horrible, but in corporate America standards, if you're giving your employees 5%, that's good. It's several companies doing 2 to 3%. The average is 3% in 2025. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. One thing that I thought about that could actually potentially spin off of that is, people forget sometimes that they can negotiate duties, they can negotiate new assignments, they can negotiate new job titles. So if the merit, it might be 5%, but you're aiming for something else, then put something else on the table in terms of how your job scope could change also, because that's a point of elasticity also inside of some organizations. Not everyone, but inside of some organizations for sure.
Mhm.
Someone asked what your thoughts were on, let's say you're living and working remotely in a state where there is no pay transparency, but the company you're working for is in another state where there is pay transparency.
Mhm.
or vice
So,
versa? How do you handle that?
um, it goes both ways to me. I would pick the pay that's paying me the most, um, and make it work like that. Because you could be like, hey, this is where corporate's based out of, but this is where we're living. So I had a friend who was working in Dallas for the IRS, but then had to go to Mississippi, and so that IRS branch doesn't pay as much. So there was a decline in
It's,
pay because it was Mississippi.
it's
So
Mississippi.
it kind of depends on how you want to work it, but you can always ask, hey, here's the cost of living. I want this to match that. And it could be done if they can. Some companies have a little bit more strict compensation policies, but
Correct.
heck yeah, it
Correct.
doesn't rule anything out. Go with the one that has the higher one, and you can justify either position.
You're right. It really just boils down to research and, staying reasonable, staying positive. And I've seen HR actually, like you said, this job pays 100,000 and somebody's asking for 140. And I've seen HR offices that will actually send you the salary surveys. They'll send you the data and say, this is what we're looking at, but you have left a really bad taste if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do that research, if you didn't do that research yourself.
Yeah.
One person asked, what if you have two offers and one company is interested enough to ask you, what is the other company offering?
It
And
depends on if it's
I'm
more.
thinking they might want to match or.
If it's more, I love my little screenshot, and then I'd put the names through it, but let them see this is a legit company at Samsung.com, at Amazon.com, and then the names. And if the salary is right, I would say I'll say, yeah, here's what they're offering me. Can you match this? I would love to start with you. And if you can't
Right,
match it,
right,
have
right.
them make it up to you with extra 2 days of something else. That's fine. If they
Correct,
can't match it,
correct,
get something out of the deal
correct,
because you know what job you really want. Um,
correct, correct.
and say you do have an offer, you can still find something legit that shows that you have an offer that doesn't have, or you're having negotiation conversations. Screenshot that over and share that over, because maybe they aren't paying you as more, but you don't feel comfortable sharing that. But here's what I do feel comfortable sharing: just some type of legitimacy to see that recruiter's name in that domain at that particular company, and then y'all are talking about money, but I really want to just come to you. So, and with them falling in love with you as the candidate, they know that you're likely telling the truth and you're being sincere and you're being honest. And
And they
that,
feel
man, we
better
don't want to
too
lose this
sometimes
person.
about having a stronger candidate that is in demand.
Hmm.
And they really, HR offices, we don't want all the work that we've put into there's nothing more frustrating in an HR office
Yeah.
than losing the candidate that you wanted to make the offer to. There
Ooh.
is so much work and effort that goes into getting to that point. As the job seeker and the candidate, you have a lot of power in that equation because you
Hmm.
like them, they like you. You're looking for a mutually good opportunity. To have to
Yes.
start over a couple of $1,000, it's not
Hmm.
something that HR departments relish.
Right.
Recruiters will go in and fight leadership to get you something, to get you the money that you need, right? Let's
Hmm.
see here. This is Delandra. Delandra says, I just had an interview and the starting pay was 70. The recruiter asked if that was okay. I replied, yes. When offered the job, can I still negotiate for a higher salary?
Um, you said yes verbally.
Looks
You
like
didn't.
that. Yes.
Did you sign anything?
Yes.
Okay, so she
Yes.
said yes verbally.
Mhm.
So, when you say yes, that is a form of an agreement. That's like a legal binding agreement. You can still attempt to get out of it. It just kind of depends on how far you are in the process. If you said yes today or yesterday, I would call them back immediately or shoot them an email tonight saying, "Hey, you know, I had an opportunity to do a little bit more research. Is there any way that we can get closer to 78,000?"
And that's a
You
great
just
time,
ask.
like you said, to not use a even number, go for an oddball number. Like I just did some, I really need 77.4
Yep.
because yeah, you've done the additional work.
Yeah.
Let's see here. This is LP. Hey, Dr.
Even that,
Arms.
hold on to close that out.
Yes,
Even if it's a conversation with the recruiter, they're filling you out and they're taking. Remember, what I told you better take notes. They're taking notes. So you said 70. So when they come with the offer, they're going to go off what you said. And it's funny how you said 70 and they gave you 70. And it's always funny, like, man, I wonder if I would have asked for 71 if they would have gave me 71. If I would have asked for
right,
73. So
right.
this is the whole lesson. And sometimes we got to learn the hard way. But now moving forward, at least you know. But you can always send an email before you start, before you sign something, and see if you can have that conversation. Hey, is there any way? I know, and own it. I know I said 70. Own that you said 70. I feel like, I know I made a mistake and I want to come back and just be an advocate for myself. And is there any way that we can get closer to $78,000?
Great answer. Absolutely great answer. Okay, this person, LP, this is my reposted question to Cory from the Q&A. How do you justify higher salary based on cost of living without disclosing too much of the personal expenses?
So every company should be doing compensation reviews on what the market is, right? There should be a company, they should be hiring a company on a yearly or biannual or semi-annually, some type of consistent method, whatever they sign up for, that says, here's what you should be paying people in this marketing role. Here's what you should pay an information tech in this role. Here's what you should be paying a director. So when they give you an offer, the cost of living is included in that offer. What you do at time of negotiation is you do your own real-time investigation. Hence, I talked about research several times. Part of your research is inclusive of that. It's not a cost of living thing. It's more of, here's what the going market rate is. And the going market rate is inclusive of what the cost of living is, um, however you want to call it. I'm telling you about the cost of living because that's the expense that we as employees really face. That's just really what it's fantasized under. But when they're calculating the job duties and responsibilities of the job, they also should be taking into account your local area of where you'll be performing those tasks and those duties at, right? We all know if you're performing somewhere in New York, it's different from Arkansas. If you're performing somewhere doing a job in Arkansas, it's going to be a different pay scale structure for the person living in California, although y'all all do the same thing. What I've done before is I made them reassess it when they say, I'll get back to you, and it makes them question what this guy is saying. So I push them to go do their job. You know what? Hold on. Hey, how much should we be paying this guy? Right. And
Right.
so that just leans in your favor because they could be out of whack. And they probably went 3 years playing games with people before they had a true company evaluation. Right. Just like we should be having safety inspections for the fire alarms on a consistent basis, we should be getting recertified. They should be re-evaluating the compensation that they're paying their employees. Most companies don't do
Absolutely.
that until they have a threshold of turnover. Oh, we got high turnover. Now let's give a darn. What are we missing here? Is it the pay? Is it the benefits? Are we asking too much? We shouldn't ask for degrees. We should not ask for masters. So that's why, because it also goes in reverse, like I just said. If they're too below what the market value is, they're missing out on quality candidates and everybody's jumping ship. That's why
Absolutely.
you always hear about Google having sleep pods and you want to have a sex change. They do these extreme benefits because they want to be competitive beyond salary because Meta, Facebook can steal Google employees if they're not on their game. And then
That's true.
Samsung can steal Google employees because they're not on their game, offering, everybody's doing unlimited PTO. So we need to do unlimited PTO.
Limited PTO.
I gave you a
Yes.
lot there, but I just want you to paint that picture when it comes to cost of living. Those are things to consider, and you put that owners. That's the ownership of the company to really making sure they're doing their best practice and taking care of their candidates when they're doing offers.
And you're right on the HR side, just so everybody knows, we refer to that as compensation and classification. So you're absolutely correct. Those salary scales, those pay bands should be changing. And you may be the candidate who sits in front of a person that says, when are you basing that on a recent classification, salary classification inside of your organization, because here's what public surveys are saying. But
Yep.
good point. And don't forget also that, Cory, you shared your three numbers: minimum acceptable number, your target number, and your turnout number. So whatever number you are coming up with would be inside of those three numbers anyway that you're
Mhm.
working with. So you're not going to necessarily narrow it down to, well, I have a specific car payment, or, my children are in private school. You're not going to get to that. You're going to figure it out inside of your numbers.
Oh, good
So
point. Thank you, doctor.
if the job description has a specific amount, not a range, how do you negotiate a higher salary? And I think you've covered
Yeah.
you've covered
The,
you've covered that.
yep. Same rule applies. You know what your number is, and you know what the market should be offering. I mean, if
Yeah.
I was HR, I'd put a low number too to see what I'd get.
And
Thank
you're
God
gonna
they
get a
even
lot of
gave you an amount.
unqualified people.
Yeah, thank God they
Uh,
gave you an amount because they dropped the anchor. So now you know
Good point.
you have somewhat of a range that you can play with. So I know they playing me for at least 15K. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna go in with 20 and see how the conversation goes.
There you go. There you go. They dropped the anchor. That's right. Ishni says, my last interview, when they asked for my salary, I always give a range. I referenced salary.com, told them that the medium range was 106K. When they gave me the first offer, it was about 85K. I told that wasn't going to work, knowing my worth. I reiterated the median. They came back a couple of days with a reclassified title. So they
Mhm.
changed the job title and offered 105, and I accepted.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Yep.
Yeah, that's how it works sometimes. They do reclassify, they do go back and change things.
Mhm.
Let's see here. Geez, take a look. We are sharing our survey with you. So if you can complete the survey, I think we're going to share the recording. Thanks again, Cory. I don't want to take a whole lot of your time. We're way past 8:15. But as
Oh
usual,
yeah.
you drop a lot of important information, and you say it in a way where people can get it. And I love that you help people really take the fear out of negotiations, because it's like you said, if you start off right out of college, it follows you for your
Mhm.
entire career. It really does, because salaries kind of just build on, what other prior salaries were. So be bold, get that career confidence, like Cory says. So, and feel free to reach out to Cory. Definitely, I'm sure he'd be happy
Yes.
to work with you. So thanks again, Cory.
Absolutely. Share with a friend. Thank you for having me.
Take
And
care.
thanks for sharing that good story.